Nobody your age you could have hung out with.
No.
No women your age you could date. You had to pick on a 13-year-old girl.
Pretty much, yeah.
The new EDP documentary might genuinely be one of the strangest things I've watched in a while, because everybody already knows why EDP became one of the most hated people on YouTube, but for years whenever he talked about getting exposed there was always some excuse, some denial, some attempt to dance around what actually happened. This documentary is completely different, because now you've got EDP sitting in a professional interview being asked straightforward questions about why he went to that house and giving answers that somehow make the original situation look even worse. But the craziest part is just EDP, because this documentary also exposes how badly some of the YouTube predator catchers surrounding him handled everything, and that's where this story gets much messier.
How did you go to that location? What did you think was going to happen?
I showed up to that location that day, trying to obviously meet up with an underage girl. You know what I mean? And I guess you can say trying to have, I don't know. I mean, whatever.
You trying to have sex with a 13-year-old girl?
For the most part, yeah.
And honestly, the thing that makes the documentary so uncomfortable isn't even some massive new revelation, it's just how casually he talks about everything. He's sitting there like he's explaining some embarrassing mistake from high school, except he's talking about attempting to meet a child. There's almost no urgency in his voice, no sense that he's discussing something that permanently destroyed his reputation. And the documentary keeps pushing him on why he was interested in someone so much younger than him. His answer basically comes down to control. That's actually one of the more revealing parts of the whole interview.
I have a tendency of doing this, I feel like, because they enjoy the innocence and having control of somebody, you know?
Sounds like that's what you wanted to do.
Right.
Nobody your age you could have hung out with.
No.
No women your age you could date. You had to pick on a 13-year-old girl.
Pretty much, yeah.
And this is where the documentary becomes incredibly frustrating, because you're watching EDP openly acknowledge why he showed up, while also knowing the original sting never resulted in the outcome everyone expected. The original catch became one of the biggest videos on the internet, everybody saw it, and EDP's career basically vanished overnight, but legally it became a complete mess, and even EDP knows it. At one point in the documentary, Chris Hansen points out that if the original operation had been handled properly, his situation could have been completely different. EDP basically responds by pointing out that he's still a free man, and that's exactly why the original predator catching operation gets dragged so heavily throughout his documentary. They have one of the biggest catches imaginable and somehow turned it into content before turning it into an effective case. But I mean, what do you expect from Alex Rosen?
So hot and cute and even had me off. Were you masturbating when you were talking to her?
Mm-hmm.
You sent her pictures?
Yeah.
You sent her pictures of your penis?
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Right, I know.
It's illegal. Had Alex Rosen not botched this, you might be in prison right now.
Thank God he didn't.
Well, you could look at it two ways. Maybe prison is where you belong because of this.
If it was...
And I mean, to give some credit and as respect, as Alex Rosen has arrested some nasty individuals, he didn't completely run from the criticism. The documentary directly asks him, like, what accountability do you take for EDP still being free? And Alex basically admits he could have handled the situation much better. He says there were things he could have done differently, and that the EDP catch taught his group lessons about how these operations should actually be handled. That's probably true, but that's a pretty painful lesson when the person teaching you that lesson is EDP. Because we're now years removed from the sting, watching the guy openly discuss what happened with not a single care in the world, while the people who caught him are explaining how the operation helped them improve their technique. That's an insane outcome.
Accountability can you take in the fact that EDP is free today?
Well, yeah. I mean, I myself could have done a better job of saying, you know, instead of trying to just like, you know, stand my ground, be bullish, standoffish, infinitely more stuff that I could have done to try to make him, you know, to at least put in more effort into hoping that he gets arrested. But, you know, I can confidently say that predator poachers have been responsible for getting like infinitely sicker people in EDP off the streets, and EDP played a part in teaching us that lesson on how to do that.
My thoughts on Alex Rosen is I feel like he's a piece of...
And then the documentary keeps going. EDP says some of the most horrendous stuff imaginable on this earth and openly discusses being attracted to girls who are under 18. And somehow he says all of this with the exact same casual attitude. At this point, you don't need another 10 disgusting clips to understand what kind of person we're dealing with. The documentary makes that extremely obvious. What interests me more is what happened when other YouTubers decided they could turn catching people like EDP into an entire genre of content, because this leads directly into Kayla's situation.
My name is Kayla Hoskins, and in June 2023, I received an Instagram DM from EDP445, otherwise known as Bryant. I first replied to EDP because I always reply to anyone who messages me, and I didn't know who he was, but I freaked out because he told me he was suicidal, and sooner rather than later he started sending very flirtatious messages. While later, Jadion added EDP into his Discord filled with kids for a Q&A.
And this might be the part that makes the predator catching side of the documentary look the worst. Kayla Hoskins says EDP originally contacted her via Gideon's Discord, and this Discord reportedly included young users. And Kayla says the situation eventually turned into people encouraging her to keep communicating with EDP because they wanted to catch him. That's a massive difference, because there's a world of difference between trained adults operating a controlled sting and allowing a teenager to stay in contact with a known predator because the situation could become a video. And Kayla now says she feels like she was used, and she rightfully can believe that. And this is insane, because I thought like Gideon was like, you know, better than this, but wow, like I did not expect him to be like this.
Were you his puppet?
I feel like I was his puppet because I was just like kind of doing the things he demanded me to do. I feel like I am a victim of Gideon because he encouraged me to keep talking to him.
Kayla was reportedly around 15 at the time. I mean, you have adults who already know exactly who EDP is, they already know what he has been exposed for, and instead of keeping a teenager as far away from him as humanly possible, she says she was encouraged to keep the conversation going. Why? Because catching EDP again would have been massive content, and this is the problem the documentary keeps turning to. Predator catching sounds noble, and sometimes these groups do actually help authorities, but the moment getting the craziest thumbnail becomes more important than handling the situation responsibly, everything can fall apart. That's exactly what happened with the original EDP sting, and according to Kayla, another creator came dangerously close to repeating the same mistake.
I'd like to let the viewers know that I don't know what they're gonna say, but don't believe it. Because I have proof. I'm just too scared to show the proof because Jadion has a big audience, and I don't want them to attack me.
And this is another ugly part of influencer drama nobody really talks about. When one creator has millions of followers and the other person has basically no audience, it doesn't matter whether both sides technically have the same ability to upload a video, they do not have the same power. The documentary argues that after Gideon reacted to Kayla, his audience flooded her comments and accused her of lying. And then the criticism becomes she's just doing this for clout, which is incredibly convenient because now you don't actually have to answer what she's saying, you just attack her reason for saying it. Maybe she's telling the truth, maybe parts of these competing stories eventually get challenged, but she wants attention isn't evidence that what she's saying is false.
She's sort of using the whole situation as leverage to boost her music career and such. So, you know, again, while she's a victim, I think she's kind of using the whole situation as leverage to gain followers a little bit.
And this argument always annoys me. Let's say somebody does gain followers from telling their story. Okay, now what? Does that automatically mean the story didn't happen? Those are two completely separate questions. Kayla herself eventually admits she's an opportunistic person in general, but she specifically says the situation wasn't some calculated opportunity to grow her career. And honestly, that's the actual claim people need to address. Did she get encouraged to keep talking to EDP? Who knew she was communicating with him? And who was responsible for making sure a teenager wasn't being used as bait for internet content?
Personally, am I an opportunist? Yes, I am. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're not harming anybody, and I don't think I was harming anybody. And especially when you're my age, if you're 16, people are gonna think that you're young and dumb. So you kind of have to be an opportunist. You have to make your own opportunities. You cannot be waiting for them. But this entire situation was not that at all.
And that's really the biggest thing I really took away from this documentary. EDP is obviously responsible for EDP. He destroyed his own career. I mean, he chose to go to that location. Nobody forced him to do that. But people hunting predators still have a responsibility not to make the situation worse. The original EDP sting became one of the biggest examples of what happens when content and clout become mixed with something that is really serious. And if Kayla's account is true, people didn't completely learn that lesson. You cannot say you're protecting kids while allegedly putting a kid in direct contact with the exact type of person you're claiming to protect them from. At that point, it's not protection, it's just content for you. This documentary doesn't make EDP look misunderstood. If anything, hearing him talk this openly makes the entire original situation even harder to watch. But the more interesting story might be everything that happened around him. One massively botched sting, another teenager saying she was encouraged to stay involved, creators fighting over who's telling the truth, and an entire genre where catching predators can generate millions of views. There's nothing wrong with exposing dangerous people, but if you're going to do it, the priority has to actually be protecting kids instead of trying to get that crazy thumbnail. Because EDP is basically the perfect example of what can happen when you get that order backwards. Anyways, what do you guys think? I love you all. Please subscribe. Mwah.